I should have kept my mouth shut. But there's something about gridlock on a Tuesday afternoon that makes you forget who you're supposed to be. Polite, invisible, careful. His black SUV cut me off at the intersection of 5th and Madison, and I laid on my horn like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. In a way I didn't understand yet. The tinted window rolled down slowly, theatrically, and that's when I saw him. Dark eyes that looked like they'd witnessed things I couldn't imagine, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, and that smirk. God, that smirk, like he knew every secret I'd ever kept. "You always this brave?" he asked, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. I should have apologized. I should have looked away. Instead, I met his gaze and said, "Only when it matters." He laughed, low and dangerous, and something in my chest tightened. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that stupid, reckless moment, was the hinge my entire life would swing on. 3 days later, I was wiping down tables at Marco's, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. The lunch rush had ended. My feet ached. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual monotonous song. I'd been rebuilding myself here for 8 months, one shift at a time, staying small, staying safe. The tips were decent. The questions were few. Nobody cared about the oversized sunglasses I wore indoors or the way I flinched when men raised their voices. That's when the door opened. The restaurant didn't just go quiet, it went still. The kind of still that happens when prey senses a predator. He walked in wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual rent, moving through the space like he owned it. Maybe he did. In this city, men like him owned everything that mattered. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. Maria, our hostess, stammered through her greeting. I tried to disappear into the kitchen, but Tony, my manager, caught my arm. Table 12, VIP. My stomach dropped. I can't. You can. His grip tightened slightly. And you will. I approached with the menu clutched in my shaking hands. He was looking at his phone, but I knew. He'd clocked me the second I came near. The air around him felt charged, dangerous. "Welcome to Marco's," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Can I start you with you?" He looked up, and there was that smile again. "I'll start with you." My throat went dry. "I'm sorry." "Sit down, Emma." The fact that he knew my name made my skin prickle with ice. I glanced around. The other waitresses were suddenly very interested in their side work. The bartender was polishing the same glass over and over. Nobody was going to help me. "I'm working." "Not anymore." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Marco understands, and somehow, impossibly, I knew it was true. Whatever power this man wielded reached into places I thought were mine alone. I sat because refusing felt more dangerous than complying. Because I'd learned a long time ago to read the room, and this room was telling me to shut up and listen. Up close, he was even more unsettling. The scar through his eyebrow was old, faded but permanent. His hands were clean, but his knuckles were scarred. He smelled like cedar and something darker, like smoke from a fire that never quite went out. "You wear sunglasses indoors," he observed, his gaze traveling to the oversized frames I never took off. "What are you hiding from?" "Everything," I thought. "Everyone. You. Light sensitivity." I lied. "Interesting." He leaned back, studied me like I was a puzzle he was solving in real time. "Most people who lie to me don't make it this obvious. I appreciate the honesty in your dishonesty. I don't know what you want. I want to know who's been following you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "No one's following me." The man in the gray Honda. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was reading from a grocery list. "He's been parked outside your apartment 3 times this week. Followed you to work today. Sits there for hours, watching." My blood turned to ice. The coffee I'd had for breakfast threatened to come back up. I'd noticed the car, of course I'd noticed, but I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid, that my past wasn't catching up to me, that I was safe here. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." He reached across the table, and I flinched. He paused, then very slowly, very deliberately, pulled my sunglasses off. His expression didn't change as he studied the fading bruise beneath my left eye, the one I'd covered so carefully with makeup that morning. "How long has he been hitting you?" "He doesn't... That's not..." My voice cracked. That was from before. Someone else. A different life. And the man in the Honda? I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Because if I admitted I knew who it was, if I said Craig's name out loud, then it became real. Then I had to face the fact that I hadn't escaped at all. That the past 8 months of careful anonymity had been nothing but borrowed time. He slid my sunglasses back across the table. "Here's what's going to happen, Emma. You're going to tell me everything. And then you're going to let me fix it. You can't fix this. Watch me." There was something in his voice, not arrogance, but certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from having fixed worse things than a woman with a stalker and a bruised face. It should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me, because men who could fix things could also break them. And I'd spent too long piecing myself back together to risk shattering again. "I don't even know your name." "Dominic Russo." He extended his hand across the table. "And I know yours is Emma because I make it my business to know things. But I'm guessing that's not the name you were born with." I didn't take his hand. "Why do you care?" For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Something almost human. Because 3 days ago, you looked at me like I was just another asshole in traffic. Not a name. Not a reputation. Just a person being rude. He lowered his hand. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? So this is what? Gratitude? This is me paying attention." He stood, buttoned his jacket. The man in the Honda drives a 2018 gray Accord, license plate JKL 4792. His name is Craig Mitchell. He works for people who don't like unfinished business. And you, Emma, are unfinished business. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Craig, he'd found me. After 8 months of silence, of safety, of pretending I could build a normal life, he'd found me. Dominic pulled out a business card, set it on the table. "My number. Use it when you're ready to stop pretending you're not in danger. I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can?" He turned to leave, then paused. "But here's the thing about handling yourself. It only works until it doesn't. And Craig Mitchell is the kind of problem that doesn't stop until someone makes him stop." He walked out, and the restaurant exhaled. Maria rushed over, her eyes wide. "Do you know who that was?" "No." I pocketed the business card. "Should I?" "That's Dominic Russo. His family basically runs the North End. He's..." She lowered her voice. "He's dangerous, Emma. If he's paying attention to you, that's either very good or very, very bad." I went back to work, cleared tables, smiled at customers, pretended my hands weren't shaking. But when my shift ended and I walked to the subway, I saw it, the gray Honda, parked across the street, and Craig, sitting in the driver's seat, watching. Our eyes met through the windshield. He smiled, not the kind of smile that meant hello, the kind that meant I see you, the kind that meant you can't hide. I made it 3 blocks before I pulled out Dominic's card. Made it another 2 before I actually dialed the number. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. "Emma, the Honda is following me. I know, Michael's 2 cars behind you. He won't let anything happen." "Who's Michael?" "My driver. Your protection." A pause. "Go home. Lock your doors. Tomorrow morning, there will be a car waiting for you. We'll handle this." I didn't agree to. "From now on," he said quietly, each word deliberate, "no one touches you." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there on the sidewalk, people flowing around me like water around a stone, and felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Because those words should have felt like salvation, should have felt like safety. Instead, they felt like a door closing. And I was on the wrong side of it, locked in with a man I didn't know, running from a past I couldn't escape, caught between 2 kinds of danger with no clear path to safety. The gray Honda drove past slowly. Craig waved, and I understood, finally, that my carefully constructed life of invisibility was over. Dominic Russo had seen me, Craig Mitchell had found me, and whatever came next wasn't going to let me stay small anymore. I just had to decide which danger I'd rather face. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every sound in my apartment became a threat. The radiator's hiss. Footsteps in the hallway above, the distant wail of sirens that never seem to stop in this city. I sat on my couch with the lights off, watching the street below through a gap in the curtains. The gray Honda was gone, but so was my peace of mind. At 6 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Black car outside. Driver's name is Michael. He'll take you wherever you need to go. No greeting, no explanation. Just Dominic Russo's voice. Matter of fact, like he was ordering coffee instead of reorganizing my entire life. I didn't ask for I know what you didn't ask for. A pause. And I heard something in the background. Traffic, maybe, or voices. He was already moving through his day while mine had barely started. You also didn't ask for Craig Mitchell to find you. Sometimes what we need and what we want are different things. He hung up before I could argue. I looked out the window. Sure enough, a black sedan idled at the curb, exhaust ghosting in the cold morning air. A man stood beside it, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of still that comes from military training. He was looking up at my window like he knew exactly where I was. I deleted Dominic's number from my call history, put on my sunglasses even though the sun hadn't fully risen, took the subway to work like I always did, like I was still in control of my own life. The man in the sedan, Michael, apparently didn't follow. At least, I didn't see him follow. Marcos was quiet when I arrived. Tuesday mornings were always slow. I tied on my apron, started my side work, tried to pretend yesterday hadn't happened. Tony was in the kitchen doing inventory. Maria hadn't shown up yet. It was just me and the coffee maker and the morning light slanting through the windows. Then my phone rang again. Tony this time. Emma? Yeah, listen, Mr. Russo called. My stomach dropped. Okay. He said you have the week off. Paid? I didn't ask for time off. I know. Tony's voice was apologetic but firm. But he was very insistent. Said you needed rest. Said it wasn't a request. He doesn't get to decide that. Silence on the other end. Then, Emma, I don't know what's going on with you two, but when Dominic Russo calls and makes that kind of request, I'm not in a position to say no. Take the week. Your shifts will be here when you get back. If I get back, I thought. I hung up, stood there in the empty restaurant with my apron half-tied and my hands shaking. This was how it started, wasn't it? First the protection I didn't ask for, then the decisions made without my input, then the slow, suffocating takeover of every choice until I was just another thing he controlled. I'd lived that life before, with Daniel, with the man who'd given me the bruise Dominic had seen so clearly. It started with caring. Always started with caring. Then it morphed into monitoring, then possession. Then the first slap that he swore would be the last. It wasn't. I walked home because I needed to move, needed to feel my legs carrying me through space I controlled. But when I got to my apartment building, there was a locksmith changing my locks. Hey, I said, my voice sharper than intended. What are you doing? Upgrading your security, ma'am. He was cheerful, oblivious. Mr. Russo's orders, new deadbolts, reinforced strike plates, peephole camera. You'll be much safer. I didn't authorize this. He did. The locksmith gestured to a work order on his clipboard. Paid in full. Should be done in about an hour. I stood there on the sidewalk, feeling my autonomy evaporate like water on hot pavement. He'd invaded my workplace, my home. The few spaces I'd carved out as mine alone. And everyone, Tony, the locksmith, probably my landlord too, they all just accepted it. Because when Dominic Russo decided something, people fell in line. I called the number he'd used that morning. He answered immediately. Emma, you can't just take over my life. I'm not taking it over. I'm keeping you alive. His voice was maddeningly calm, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. The man following you isn't just some ex with boundary issues. Craig Mitchell works for people who don't like loose ends. And you, sweetheart, are a very loose end. Don't call me sweetheart. Noted. No apology in his tone. Pack a bag. You're staying somewhere safe until this is handled. No, that wasn't a request. Then it's a prison. My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it, for sounding weak, for letting him hear what this was doing to me. It's protection. He was quiet for a moment, and I heard him breathe. Just that. One long exhale that sounded almost human. Emma, how much do you know about Craig Mitchell? Enough. Then you know he's been arrested 4 times for assault, 3 different women, restraining orders in 2 states. He did 18 months in county lockup for breaking his girlfriend's jaw. A pause. That's who's following you. That's who knows where you live, where you work, what time you leave in the morning. So forgive me if I'm not asking your permission to keep you breathing. I sat down on the front steps of my building. The locksmith drilled away upstairs, and the sound felt like it was drilling into my skull. How do you know all this about him? Because knowing things is how I stay alive. His voice softened slightly. You don't have to trust me. You just have to stay alive long enough to decide if you want to. The line went quiet. Neither of us hung up. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. His stubbornness, my fear, the fact that I knew he was right, even as I hated him for it. If I do this, I said finally, I need to know you're not like him. That this protection isn't just another kind of trap. I can't prove that with words. He was honest, at least. You'll have to see it for yourself. And if I don't like what I see, then you leave. I'll help you disappear properly this time. New identity, new city, enough money to start over. No strings. It sounded too good to be true. In my experience, that meant it was... When? Tonight. Michael will pick you up at 8. He hung up before I could change my mind. The building Dominic took me to wasn't just expensive, it was obscene. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Doorman in an actual uniform. Lobby that looked like a museum. Michael escorted me to a private elevator that required a keycard. We rode to the top floor in silence. The penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked like art. A kitchen with appliances I didn't recognize. Everything was clean, modern, impersonal, like a hotel suite designed by someone who'd never actually lived in it. Guest rooms down the hall, Michael said, pointing. Bathroom stocked. Fridge has food. Doors locked from the inside. Mr. Russo will check in tomorrow. He's not staying here. He has other properties. Michael's expression was carefully neutral. This one's secure. Safe. You'll be comfortable here. Then he left. And I was alone in a stranger's penthouse with a bag full of hastily packed clothes and the growing certainty that I'd just made a terrible mistake. There was a note on the kitchen counter in sharp, masculine handwriting. Fridge is stocked. Doors lock from inside. Call if you need anything. D. I explored the space like a prisoner checking her cell. The guest room had a queen bed with sheets that probably cost more than my rent. The bathroom had expensive toiletries, all unopened, like he'd bought them specifically for me. There was even a robe hanging on the back of the door, soft and white and nothing like anything I'd ever owned. I sat on the couch and let myself cry. Not because I was scared, though I was. Not because I was angry, though I was that too. I cried because I'd spent 8 months building a life where I didn't owe anyone anything, where I could walk through the world unnoticed, where I was my own person, beholden to nothing but my own choices. And now I owed Dominic Russo everything. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. For a second, I thought it was him, checking on me. Instead, the message made my blood freeze. We know where you are. We know who's protecting you. You were chosen as a message, Emma. Make sure it's delivered. The phone slipped from my hands, clattered on the marble floor. I stared at it like it might explode. Because if they could reach me here, in Dominic's fortress, in his world of money and power and supposed safety, then maybe no one was powerful enough to keep me safe. Maybe I'd just traded one kind of danger for another. And maybe Dominic Russo wasn't my savior at all. Maybe he was just the next man who thought he could own me. The message stayed on my screen all night. I must have read it 100 times, trying to decode what it meant. You were chosen as a message. Not randomly targeted, not collateral damage, chosen. Which meant someone knew exactly who I was, what I represented, and how to use me. I didn't tell Dominic, not that night, anyway. Some instinct, survival, maybe, or just stubborn independence, told me to hold this one card close. Because if I showed him the text, it proved his point. That I needed him. That I couldn't handle this alone. And I'd spent too many years proving I could handle anything alone. The penthouse felt like a beautiful cage. By the second morning, the walls were closing in. I told myself I was just going for coffee. Somewhere normal. Somewhere that felt like my life before Dominic Russo decided I was his problem to solve. I watched through the window until Michael walked to the corner deli, his routine shift change happening like clockwork. Then I took the service elevator down. The coffee shop was 3 blocks away. I'd made it 2 when the van pulled up. Everything happened fast. Too fast for my brain to catch up with my body. A hand over my mouth, rough and smelling of cigarettes. Another arm around my waist, lifting me off my feet. The world tilted sideways as they dragged me toward the open side door. I fought, drove my elbow back, felt it connect with something soft. Someone grunted, but there were 2 of them, both bigger, both stronger, both moving with the efficiency of men who'd done this before. I remember thinking, this is how it ends. This is how I disappear. Then the first man hit the pavement, and I didn't see how. Dominic was there. But he wasn't the man from the restaurant, the one in the expensive suit with the careful words. This version was colder, faster, precise. He moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently, every motion economical, practiced. He didn't fight like men in movies fight, all flash and drama. He fought like someone who'd studied exactly how to break a body and had done it enough times to be bored by the mechanics. The second man reached for something in his jacket. Dominic's hand snapped out, caught his wrist, twisted. The sound, bone grinding against bone, made me flinch and look away. When I looked back, the man was on his knees, his face gray with pain. "You know the rules," Dominic said, his voice eerily calm. Like he was discussing the weather instead of holding a man's arm at an angle arms weren't meant to bend. "She's under my protection. That makes her off limits." Vasquez said. "I don't care what Vasquez said." He released the man, who crumpled to the pavement, clutching his wrist. "Tell him if he wants to send me a message, he can do it himself." Using her was a mistake. His last one, the van peeled away, leaving the 2 men on the sidewalk. Dominic turned to me, and the coldness in his eyes softened just slightly. Not much. Just enough to let me see the concern underneath. "Are you hurt?" I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. My throat was raw from the hand that had covered my mouth. My ribs ached where they'd grabbed me. But worse than the physical pain was the terror, the bone-deep understanding of how close I'd come to vanishing. "Emma." He stepped closer, his hands raised slightly, palms out, like he was approaching a frightened animal. "I need you to tell me if you're hurt." "I'm fine." The words came out broken, barely audible. "No, you're not." He shrugged off his jacket, draped it around my shoulders. It smelled like him, cedar and smoke and something expensive I couldn't name. "Come on, we're leaving." He guided me to a car I hadn't seen before. Not the sedan, something smaller. A dark sports car that looked like it cost more than most people made in a year. He opened the passenger door, waited until I was inside, then walked around to the driver's side. His movements were deliberate, controlled, like he was giving me time to fall apart without an audience. We drove in silence. I watched the city blur past, trying to process what had just happened, trying to reconcile the man who'd taken apart 2 attackers like it was nothing with the one who'd carefully adjusted his jacket on my shoulders before letting me go. "Who's Vasquez?" I finally asked. "Someone who should know better." "That's not an answer." "No." He agreed. "It's not. We weren't going back to the penthouse." The streets became less familiar, the buildings farther apart. Eventually, we turned onto a tree-lined drive that led to a house I hadn't expected. Modern but warm, all wood and glass nestled in the woods. It looked lived in. Human. Inside, it was warmer than I'd anticipated. Books on the shelves, worn in places where hands had held them. Art on the walls that looked chosen, not purchased. A fireplace with ash in the grate, evidence of actual fires, actual living. "This is yours?" I asked. "It's where I go when I need to think." He moved to a cabinet, pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. Poured without asking if I wanted any. "You need to understand something, Emma. The protection I offer isn't temporary. Once you're under my care, you stay there until the threat is eliminated. Completely. So I'm trapped. You're alive." He handed me a glass, sat in the chair across from mine, close enough that I could see the tiredness in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Close enough to be intimate without being threatening. That counts for something. I drank the whiskey, let it burn down my throat. Welcome the distraction of physical discomfort over emotional chaos. Why do you care? For the first time since the attack, something shifted in his expression. Something almost vulnerable. Because 3 days ago, you argued with me in traffic. You looked at me like I was just another person being rude. Not a name, not a reputation, not something to fear. He paused, studied his glass. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I didn't know who you were. Exactly. He leaned back, and I saw how exhausted he was. Not physically, something deeper. Soul-tired. Most people see me, and they already have the story written. They know what I am, what I've done, what I'm capable of. But you just told me I was an asshole and went about your day. You were an asshole. I was. His smile was brief, genuine. And it was the most honest interaction I'd had in months, maybe years. We sat in silence. The house made small sounds around us. Wood settling, wind in the trees outside, the distant hum of a refrigerator. Normal sounds, safe sounds. So different from the violence of an hour ago. Who chose me? I asked quietly. The text said I was chosen as a message. What does that mean? His expression went carefully blank. What text? I pulled out my phone, showed him, watched his face as he read it, saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. When did you get this? Last night. In your penthouse, which means they knew where I was. Which means your protection isn't as absolute as you claimed. Or it means there's someone inside my organization. He stood, started pacing. Someone who knew I moved you there. Someone who has access to security protocols. A traitor. A liability. He made a phone call, spoke in rapid Italian I couldn't follow. When he hung up, he looked at me with something like respect. You should have shown me this immediately. I don't owe you my every thought. No. He moved to the window, looked out at the darkening woods. But if we're going to keep you alive, I need you to trust me. At least enough to share when someone threatens you. Trust, I laughed. But there was no humor in it. You want me to trust a man who just broke someone's arm like it was nothing. Who clearly has enemies powerful enough to reach into his own home. Who won't even tell me who Vasquez is or why I'm apparently so important that people are willing to kidnap me in broad daylight. He turned from the window. You want honesty? Fine. Vasquez runs the waterfront. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. Anything that comes through the port goes through him. We have an arrangement. He stays off my territory, I stay off his. Using you breaks that arrangement. Why? Because you're connected to me now. Attacking you is attacking me. It's a statement, a power play. His eyes were dark, unreadable. Or it's something worse. What could be worse? It could mean he knows who you really are. The air left my lungs. What? Dominic walked to his study, returned with a folder. He opened it on the coffee table between us. Inside were photographs, security camera stills, documents, a whole life I'd never known I was being cast into. The first photo showed a woman who looked like me. Same build, same hair color, similar features. She was standing outside what looked like a courthouse, surrounded by suited men. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, Dominic said quietly. Craig's daughter. 3 years ago, she testified against her father. Put him in prison for aggravated assault and racketeering. When he got out 18 months later, he found out she'd been killed. My hands shook as I picked up the photo. The resemblance was uncanny. Not identical, but close enough. She was murdered by one of Craig's own associates, a man named Tony Vasquez. Dominic's voice was measured, clinical. They were tying up loose ends. Sarah knew too much about her father's business connections. She was a liability. And Craig blames everyone except himself. He pulled out another document, a police report. He's been looking for a woman who looks like Sarah ever since. Some kind of redemption obsession or revenge. I'm still figuring out which. So I'm what? A replacement daughter? Or a scapegoat? Or a message to Vasquez that Craig's still playing the game? Dominic sat beside me and I could feel the heat of him, the solid presence that should have been comforting, but instead felt overwhelming. The point is, you're not random. You never were. You look enough like Sarah that Craig convinced himself you could be his second chance. Or his weapon. I stared at the photographs, my vision blurring. This is insane. Welcome to my world. The last page in the folder made me stop breathing. It was a restraining order, filed 2 years ago, against any woman matching a specific description, filed by Elena Russo. Your wife, I said. Ex-wife. His voice went flat. And that order wasn't about you specifically. It was about anyone who matched a certain profile. She was paranoid toward the end. Thought I was having affairs with women who looked like Sarah Mitchell. Were you? No. He met my eyes. But Elena never believed me. And 3 months after she filed that order, she was killed. The official story was a mob hit, retribution for cooperation with the FBI. The real story... He stopped, jaw clenched. The real story is that I couldn't protect her. And I've been trying not to make that mistake again ever since. The weight of his confession settled over us like snow. I understood then what I was seeing in his eyes. Not just exhaustion, guilt. The kind that never fades, just gets buried deeper. Is that what I am to you? I asked softly. A second chance? A way to fix what you couldn't fix before? Maybe at first. His honesty was brutal. But now you're just Emma. The woman who yelled at me in traffic. The woman who's brave enough to run, but smart enough to know when she needs help. The woman who's sitting here asking me hard questions instead of just accepting easy answers. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression going dark. When? A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stood, looked down at me. Something's happened. I need to handle it. Michael will be here in 5 minutes to stay with you. Don't leave this house. Don't call anyone. Don't even look out the windows until I get back. What happened? Vasquez made another move. Tried to access your old apartment building. Threatened your former landlord. Asking about you. His expression was stone. This isn't about sending messages anymore, Emma. This is him coming for you directly. Which means the rules just changed. What are you going to do? He was already at the door. What I should have done days ago. I'm going to end this. Dominic. He stopped, turned. Don't do anything you can't undo. His smile was sad. Ancient. Emma. I crossed that line years ago. Then he was gone, and I was alone in his house with the photographs spread across the coffee table. Sarah Mitchell stared up at me from a dozen angles. Her face so like mine it could have been a mirror. A ghost I'd never known I was carrying. My phone buzzed. Another message. Ask him about Chicago. Ask him what he knows about Emily Russo. Ask him why he really found you. I stared at the words, my heart hammering. Because Emily Russo was a name I hadn't heard in 12 years. A name I'd buried along with everything else when I ran away from my father's house at 16. A name that meant Dominic Russo wasn't just protecting a stranger. He was protecting family. And he'd been lying to me from the very beginning. I didn't sleep. How could I, with that message burning in my mind, ask him about Chicago? Ask him what he knows about Emily Russo. The name felt like a ghost reaching through time, wrapping cold fingers around my throat. Emily Russo, the girl I'd been before I learned to run, before I understood that family could be a trap instead of a sanctuary. Dominic returned just after midnight. I heard the car first, then his footsteps on the hardwood floor. Measured. Tired. I was sitting in the dark living room, the photographs still spread across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. He stopped in the doorway when he saw me. You should be sleeping. Hard to sleep when you're living a lie. He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned on a single lamp, the soft light casting shadows across his face. There was blood on his shirt. Not much. Just a few drops on the cuff. Not his, I could tell. His knuckles were split. Raw. What did you do? I asked. What needed to be done? He moved to the kitchen, started washing his hands. The water ran pink, then clear. Vasquez won't bother you again. Neither will Craig. You killed them. I gave them a choice. He dried his hands carefully, methodically. Leave the city and never come back, or face consequences. They made their decision. So you murdered them. I protected you. He turned to face me. And there was something raw in his expression. Something that looked almost like pain. That's what you wanted, isn't it? To be safe? To not have to run anymore? I wanted honesty. I stood, moved closer to him. close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. Who is Emily Russo? The question landed like a physical blow. I watched him process it, saw the calculations behind his eyes. He could lie. We both knew he could craft something believable, something I might even accept. But something in my expression must have told him I was done accepting easy answers. How long have you known? He asked quietly. That you're my cousin? Since the moment I saw you in that restaurant? My voice was steadier than I felt. Marco Russo's nephew. The golden boy who actually made something of himself. The one they all talk about at family gatherings I haven't attended in 12 years. And you didn't say anything. Neither did you. I crossed my arms, a barrier between us. You knew who I was the whole time. You must have. The moment you ran my name, the moment you started looking into my background, you knew Emily Russo had become Emma Clark. You knew Marco's runaway daughter was serving tables 3 blocks from your office. I suspected. He moved to pour himself a drink, hands not quite steady. The resemblance to your mother was there. The timeline fit, but I wasn't certain until I saw your reaction when I mentioned Chicago. Chicago. The word tasted bitter. Where my mother hid everything before my father killed her for trying to leave. I know. He drank, closed his eyes briefly. I know what Marco did, what he's capable of, why you ran. And you still didn't tell me you knew. You let me think I was just some random woman you were protecting out of the goodness of your heart. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Except there is no goodness in your heart, is there? You're just like him. Just another Russo man who thinks he can control people's lives without their consent. That's not fair. Fair? My voice rose. Months of fear and anger finally breaking through. You want to talk about fair? You've been manipulating me from the beginning. The protection, the safe house, the concern. It was all about family obligation, about not letting Marco's daughter end up dead on your watch. It started that way, he admitted. When I first realized who you might be, yes, it was about family, about not making the same mistakes Marco made, about giving you the choice your mother never got. What choice? You've made every decision for me since the moment you rolled down that window. Because you were in danger. His control finally cracked, voice rising to match mine. Craig Mitchell was following you. Vasquez had you targeted. Your father. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. Do you have any idea what Marco would do if he found you? What he's been doing for the past 12 years looking for you? I've managed to avoid him this long. By hiding. By running every time someone got too close. By living half a life where you're always looking over your shoulder. He set down his glass with deliberate care. I'm offering you a different option. One where you don't have to hide anymore. Under your protection. Under your control. Under your own terms. He moved closer and I could smell the whiskey on his breath, the smoke in his clothes. You want honesty? Fine. Yes, I knew who you were. Yes, I had reasons beyond simple altruism for helping you. But somewhere between that traffic argument and right now, it stopped being about family obligation and started being about you. Pretty words. True words. His voice dropped, went quiet, intimate. You looked at me like I was human, Emma. Not a Russo, not a mob connection, just a person. Do you know how long it's been since anyone did that? Since Elena. Pain flickered across his face. Elena stopped looking at me like I was human long before she died. The paranoia, the fear, it poisoned everything. She saw enemies everywhere, including in me. Maybe she was right to. Maybe. He didn't flinch from it. I've done things, Emma. Things I can't undo. Things that would make you look at me the way she did at the end, like I was a monster in a man's skin. But with you, for just a moment, I got to be something else. Someone else. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the righteous fury of betrayal. But standing there in his living room, seeing the vulnerability he was offering like a gift he didn't know how to wrap, I felt something shift inside me. If we're doing honesty, I said carefully, then I need you to understand something. I ran from my father's house when I was 16 because I watched what his version of love did to my mother. The control, the possession, the way he made her smaller and smaller until there was nothing left but fear. I will not live that life again. Not for you, not for anyone. I'm not asking you to. Aren't you? the car service, the safe house. The decisions made without consulting me. I held his gaze. That's how it starts? Always starts with protection, with care, then it becomes monitoring, then ownership. Then set the terms. He stepped back, giving me space, physical and emotional. Tell me what you need, what boundaries I can't cross, what rules we play by if we're going to do this. Do what, exactly? Figure out how to keep you alive without making you feel like a prisoner. His expression was open, honest in a way that felt dangerous. How to deal with your father without handing you back to him. How to navigate this world we were both born into but wish we weren't. I thought about it. About the life I'd been living. Always moving, always hiding, always alone. About the alternative Dominic was offering, with all its complications and compromises and risks. 3 rules, he said into the silence. If you're going to stay here, if we're going to work together on this, I have 3 rules. 1. You don't leave without telling me where you're going. Not because I'm controlling you, but because I can't protect you if I don't know where you are. 2. You don't lie to me. About anything. Not your past, not your present, not how you're feeling. 3. If something feels wrong, a person, a situation, anything, you say something immediately. You don't wait. You don't try to handle it alone. They were reasonable, practical even. And somehow that made them harder to accept than if he'd been openly tyrannical. And if I have rules for you? I asked. Then I'll follow them. Simple, direct. What do you need? 1 rule. I moved to stand directly in front of him, close enough that he had to look down to meet my eyes. You don't lie to me either. Not about what you do. Not about the danger I'm in. Not about your connection to my family. Not about what this is between us. This. Whatever this is. I gestured between us, at the space that felt charged with possibility and peril in equal measure. Because it's not just protection. It's not just family obligation, it's something else. Something neither of us wants to name because naming it makes it real. He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. Deal, he said finally. No more lies, not between us. Starting now? Starting now. He held out his hand, formal, like we were sealing a business agreement instead of something far more complicated. I took it. His palm was warm, calloused. The grip was firm, but not crushing. We shook once, and neither of us let go immediately. The moment stretched, became something else. Something neither of us seemed ready to acknowledge. I released his hand first. So what happens now? Now you tell me what you know about Chicago. About what your mother hid before she died. His voice was gentle but insistent. Because whatever Craig and Vasquez wanted with you, it's connected to that. And if we're going to end this properly, we need all the pieces. I sat back down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had been carrying me was fading, leaving nothing but bone-deep tiredness in its wake. There's a safe deposit box, I said quietly. Under my mother's maiden name, Maria Castellano, it contains evidence against most of the major families on the East Coast, financial records, photographs, recorded conversations, everything she collected while she was trying to build a case with the FBI. Before Marco found out, before he killed her for it, the words still hurt, even after 12 years. She told me where it was, made me memorize the information, said if anything happened to her, I should go to the FBI with it, use it to bring them all down. But you didn't. I was 16 and terrified. I looked up at him. I knew if I used it, they'd kill me too. So I ran instead, changed my name, kept moving, and prayed no one would ever figure out that Emily Russo had become Emma Clark. Dominic was quiet, processing. Does Marco know you have access to the evidence? He knows I know where it is. That's why he's never stopped looking, why he's had people following me, monitoring me, waiting for me to lead them to it. I pulled my knees up, wrapped my arms around them. The evidence is my insurance policy. As long as it exists and he doesn't have it, I stay alive. If I die, it goes public automatically. Or at least, that's what I made sure he believed. Is it true? I have a lawyer who's never met me. A dead man's switch. Instructions in a sealed envelope. I met his eyes. If I disappear, if I die, if I don't check in every 3 months, Everything goes to the FBI and every major newspaper in the country. Smart? Necessary? I was quiet for a moment. The text I got. The one asking about Chicago. Whoever sent it knows about the evidence. Which means either my insurance policy is compromised or someone's trying to force my hand. Or both. Dominic pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I need to make some calls. Figure out who has that information and how they got it. In the meantime, he looked at me, and something in his expression had changed, softened. You should sleep. Real sleep. You're safe here. Am I? From everyone except me. He meant it as honesty, not threat. And I swear to you, Emma, I will never be what your father was to your mother. I will never make you small, never make you afraid, never take away your choices. How can you promise that? You don't know what you'll do when the pressure's on, when loyalty and love conflict. I don't, he admitted. But I know what I won't do. And I know that if I ever start acting like Marco, I'm trusting you to call me on it, to leave if you need to choose yourself first. It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. And somehow, coming from a man who'd admitted to probably killing 2 people tonight, it felt like the safest promise I'd ever received. Okay, I said softly. I'll stay. For now. For now is enough. He stood to leave, to give me privacy. But I caught his wrist. He stopped, looked down at where my fingers circled his arm. Your wife, I said. Elena, what really happened to her? The pain that crossed his face was raw, unguarded. She tried to testify against the families, came to the FBI with evidence, recordings, everything. I didn't know until it was too late. When I found out, I tried to protect her, moved her to a safe house, put my best people on her security. He swallowed hard. Someone in my organization sold her location. They killed her before she could testify, made it look like a mob hit as a warning to anyone else who might cooperate. And you've been trying to finish what she started. I've been trying to make her death mean something. He looked at our joined hands. The families need to change or die. Elena understood that. She was willing to risk everything to force that change. I wasn't strong enough to help her then, but maybe I can be now. Maybe we can be. You have evidence that could bring down the old guard. I have relationships with the new generation who want reform. Together. He stopped, shook his head. I'm getting ahead of myself. You don't owe me this fight. Maybe I do. I released his wrist. My mother tried to change things too. She died trying. Maybe it's time someone finished what our mother started. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or recognition of a kindred spirit. That's a dangerous choice. So is staying in hiding forever. I stood, faced him directly. If we do this, if we actually try to change things instead of just surviving them, we do it as equals. Not you protecting me. Not me owing you. Partners. He extended his hand again. This time, when I took it, the handshake felt like something more. A pact. A promise. The beginning of something neither of us fully understood but both recognized as necessary. Partners, he agreed. Later, lying in the guest room, I heard him moving through the house, checking locks, making phone calls in low voices, doing whatever Dominic Russo did when the sun went down and the real work began. My phone buzzed one more time. A photo, grainy and dark, but clear enough. It showed Dominic and me, standing in his living room. Taken from outside, through the window, taken tonight. Below it, a message. You missed one. The daughter always knew her father's secrets. Tomorrow, noon, Union Station, come alone, or Sophia pays for your family's sins. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Sophia, my cousin, Marco's other daughter, the one I'd left behind when I ran, the innocent one who'd never wanted any part of the family business. They had her, and they were using her to force my hand. I looked toward the door, where I could hear Dominic still moving around. I could tell him, should tell him. That was the deal. No secrets, no lies. But the message said come alone. And I'd spent 12 years learning that sometimes the only person you could trust with a life was yourself. I had 9 hours to decide who I was going to be. The woman who ran and kept running, or the woman who finally stood still and fought back. I didn't tell Dominic about the message. I know, we'd just made that deal. No lies. complete honesty. But some promises are made to be broken when someone innocent is on the line. And Sophia was innocent. She'd been 7 years old when I left. A little girl who followed me around the house asking questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go in the daytime? Why does Daddy scare you? I'd never known how to answer that last one. I left before dawn, while Dominic was still asleep. Took nothing but my phone and the clothes on my back. Michael was in the driveway, asleep in his car, head tilted back against the headrest. I felt a pang of guilt as I slipped past him through the woods behind the house. He was just doing his job. But his job was keeping me caged, even if the cage had comfortable furniture and a man who claimed to want my freedom. Union Station at noon. 3 hours to get there, figure out what they wanted, and somehow save Sophia without getting us both killed. Simple. The train was nearly empty. Just a handful of commuters staring at their phones, lost in their own worlds. I watched the city blur past, thinking about the last time I'd seen my cousin. She'd been crying, holding onto my leg, begging me not to go. And I'd left anyway. Told myself she'd be fine, that Marco wouldn't hurt his precious baby girl the way he'd hurt my mother and me. I'd been wrong about a lot of things back then. My phone rang. Dominic. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. By the 5th call, I turned it off completely. Whatever he wanted to say, whatever threats or promises or explanations, they didn't matter. Not when Sophia was in danger because of me, because of what I knew, because of the evidence I'd been too scared to use. Union Station was exactly as I remembered it, grand and bustling, voices echoing off the vaulted ceiling, people moving like water through channels only they understood. I stood in the main hall, looking for something, someone, any sign of what came next. A woman approached me, mid-40s, sharp suit, eyes that missed nothing. Emily Russo? The name felt like a slap. Who's asking? Someone who knows what you're carrying, what you're protecting. She gestured toward a quieter corridor. Walk with me. Where's Sophia? Safe. For now. She started walking, and I followed because what choice did I have? Your cousin is unharmed. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on you. We ended up in a service hallway, empty except for the industrial hum of ventilation systems. The woman turned to face me, pulled out a badge. FBI. Special Agent Sarah Chen. I've been investigating your family for 6 years. My stomach dropped. This was a setup. This was an opportunity. Her voice was measured, professional. We know about the evidence your mother compiled. We know you have access to it. We also know that your father has been looking for you since the day you disappeared. What we didn't know until recently is that you're under Dominic Russo's protection. Where is Sophia? There is no Sophia. Chen's expression softened slightly. At least, not in danger. The message was fabricated. We needed to get you alone, away from Dominic, somewhere we could talk freely. Relief and rage warred in my chest. You used my cousin to manipulate me. We used your love for your cousin to get your attention. There's a difference. She pulled out a tablet, showed me surveillance photos. Dominic and me at the restaurant, at the safe house, at his home in the woods. You've been living with one of the most dangerous men on the East Coast, a man who's been under investigation for racketeering, money laundering, and suspected involvement in at least a dozen murders. I know who he is. Do you? Chen swiped through more photos. Because from where we're standing, it looks like you've gone from hiding from one Russo to living with another, from trying to escape the family to embedding yourself deeper into it. He's protecting me. He's using you. She closed the tablet. Emily, your father is getting old. The families are restructuring. There's going to be a power vacuum, and Dominic Russo is positioning himself to fill it. Having Marco's missing daughter under his protection, that's not kindness. That's strategy. I wanted to argue, wanted to defend him. But the truth was, I'd thought the same thing myself, multiple times. In the dark hours when I couldn't sleep, when I questioned every kind word and gentle touch. What do you want from me? The same thing we wanted from your mother. The same thing Elena Russo was about to give us before she was killed. Chen's voice dropped, became almost gentle. We want you to testify. We want the evidence in Chicago. We want to dismantle the families from the inside out, and you're the key to doing it. And if I say no, then you spend the rest of your life running. Or you stay with Dominic and become exactly what your mother tried to escape. Another Russo woman trapped by men who think love and ownership are the same thing. She paused. There's a third option, of course, which is, you work with us. We put your father away for good. We offer you witness protection, real protection, not the kind that comes with strings attached to a mob boss. You get to live your life. Free. Really free. It sounded too good to be true. In my experience, that meant it was, what about Dominic? Chen's expression shifted, became harder. Dominic Russo is either going down with the rest of the families, or he's going to cooperate with our investigation. That's not your concern. The hell it isn't. The words came out sharper than I intended. You want me to betray everyone I'm connected to. You think that's freedom? I think it's survival. She pulled out a card, pressed it into my hand. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we move forward with or without you, and Emily. If you warn Dominic about this conversation, if you tell him the FBI contacted you, we'll charge you as an accessory to his crimes. You'll go down with him. That's blackmail. That's reality. She started walking away, then turned back. Your mother died trying to do the right thing. Elena Russo died trying to do the right thing. How many more women have to die before someone actually succeeds? Then she was gone, and I was alone in a service hallway, holding a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls from Dominic. 17 texts. 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. Instead, I made a different call, to a number I'd memorized 12 years ago and never forgotten. The lawyer answered on the 3rd ring. This is Richard Morrison. It's Emily Russo. I need to access the safe deposit box. A pause. I'll need verbal confirmation of the security phrase. Where the river meets the sky, my mother's love will never die. The words tasted like childhood, like the lullaby she used to sing before everything went wrong. Confirmed. The box is at First National Bank of Chicago, under the name Maria Castellano. I'll call ahead. You can access it anytime during business hours. Thank you. Miss Russo? His voice was kind, grandfatherly. Your mother was a brave woman. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hung up and stood there, weighing options. I could go back to Dominic, tell him everything, let him help me navigate this. That's what partners did, right? Trusted each other with the hard choices. But Agent Chen's words echoed in my mind. He's using you. That's strategy, not kindness. Or I could go to Chicago alone, get the evidence, look at it with my own eyes and decide what to do with it. Make my own choice for once, not the one Dominic wanted or the FBI demanded or my father would force. The train to Chicago left in 20 minutes. I bought a ticket with cash. 6 hours later, I stood outside First National Bank of Chicago, watching the sunset over the city my mother had loved. She used to bring me here as a child, before everything went bad. We'd walk along the river, eat deep dish pizza, pretend we were tourists in our own lives. She'd been happy here, or at least less afraid. This was where she'd hidden her hope for a different future. The bank manager was expecting me. He led me to the vault, used 2 keys, his and mine, to open the safe deposit box. Then he left me alone with my mother's legacy. Inside was everything Agent Chen had promised. Financial ledgers documenting decades of money laundering, photographs of meetings that were supposed to be secret, recorded conversations, dozens of them, on old cassette tapes that someone had thoughtfully converted to digital files, a complete map of the criminal infrastructure that ran the East Coast. But there was something else, something Chen hadn't mentioned. A letter, addressed to me, in my mother's handwriting. My darling Emily, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't protect you the way I wanted to. I'm so sorry, baby. I tried to leave, tried to take you somewhere safe, but your father's reach is longer than I imagined, longer than anyone's should be. This evidence is your shield and your weapon. Use it wisely. But remember, revenge is poison. It kills the drinker first. I don't want you spending your life destroying what destroyed me. I want you to build something better. There's a second box. Same bank, different name. Inside is money, enough to disappear properly, to start over somewhere your father will never find you. The account information is 847-2938-4721, name Sarah Mitchell. Yes, I used that name deliberately, Craig Mitchell's daughter. Because years ago, before everything went wrong, Sarah and I were friends. We were trying to help each other escape. She didn't make it. I didn't make it. But maybe you will. Whatever choice you make, know that I loved you enough to fight. I lost. But you're stronger than me, braver than me, smarter than me. You'll find a way to be free that doesn't require burning the world down. All my love, forever, Mama. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then I carefully folded it and put it in my pocket, close to my heart. The second box held exactly what she'd promised. Account information, a new identity, enough money to disappear forever. Everything I needed to walk away from all of it. From Dominic, from the FBI, from the families and their endless cycles of violence. I could take the money and run. Leave the evidence here. Let the past stay buried. Or I could take the evidence and use it. Finish what my mother and Elena and Sarah Mitchell had started. Or I could do something else entirely. Something neither the FBI nor Dominic nor my father would expect. My phone rang. I'd turned it back on in the vault, and now Dominic's name lit up the screen. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Then I answered, "Where are you?" His voice was tight with controlled panic. "Chicago." Jesus, Emma. Relief and anger fought for dominance in his tone. "You can't just disappear like that. I thought something had happened to you. The FBI contacted me. They want me to testify. They want the evidence. No point in lying now. They said you're using me. That having Marco's daughter under your protection is strategy, not protection." Silence on the other end. "Then, what did you tell them?" "Nothing." Yet, I looked at the contents of the safe deposit box, at my mother's final gift. I came here to see for myself, to decide what I believe. And, what do you believe? That was the question, wasn't it? After everything, the protection that felt like control, the honesty that came too late, the partnership that might just be manipulation with a prettier name. I believe my mother died trying to change something that seemed unchangeable. I believe Elena died trying to do the same thing. I believe you when you say you want things to be different. I paused. But I also believe that I'm the only person I can completely trust to make decisions about my life. So what are you going to do? I'm going to make a choice. I started putting things back in the box, making a decision even as I spoke. But first, I need you to answer a question. And I need the truth. Dominic. Not the strategic truth or the convenient truth. The actual truth. Okay. Are you using me? The question came out smaller than I intended, more vulnerable. Is protecting me really about keeping Marco's daughter alive for some future play? Or is there something real here between us? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then, at first, yes. When I realized who you were, it was about strategy. About not letting Marco's daughter end up dead on my territory. About maybe, eventually, using your existence as leverage. He took a breath. But then you sat across from me in that restaurant and called me out for being an asshole. And you let me see your bruises and didn't flinch when I saw them. And you asked hard questions instead of accepting easy answers. And somewhere in there, it stopped being strategy and started being... He stopped. Started being what? Something I don't have words for. Something that terrifies me more than anything in this world, because it makes me vulnerable. His voice went rough. I care about you, Emma. Not as a chess piece. Not as family obligation. As you. And I don't know if that's enough to make up for how this started, but it's the truth. I closed my eyes, leaning against the cold metal of the vault. The FBI gave me 48 hours to decide whether to testify. They said if I warn you, they'll charge me as an accessory. So why are you warning me? Because partners don't let partners walk into traps blind. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. And because I'm choosing to trust you. Maybe that makes me stupid. Maybe I'm repeating my mother's mistakes. But I'm choosing it anyway. Emma, I'm coming back. Tomorrow. But I need tonight to think. To figure out what I'm going to do with all of this. I looked at the evidence one more time. My mother left me a way out. Money, new identity, everything I need to disappear for real. Part of me wants to take it and run. I'd help you. He said it without hesitation. If that's what you choose, I'd make sure you got away clean. I know you would. And that, more than anything else he'd said or done, made me believe him. But I don't think I'm going to run. I think I'm tired of surviving and ready to start living. Even if living is scarier than hiding ever was. What does that mean? It means I'll tell you tomorrow, when I see you. I started gathering what I needed from the box. Dominic, thank you for answering honestly, for not trying to convince me or manipulate me or tell me what to do. You wouldn't have listened anyway. Probably not. I smiled again, felt some of the tension ease, but I appreciate you not trying. After we hung up, I sat in the vault for another hour, reading through the evidence, understanding, finally, the full scope of what my mother had compiled. It wasn't just my father. It wasn't just one family or one city. It was decades of interconnected crime, politicians on payrolls, judges making convenient rulings, police looking the other way. The whole rotten system, documented in excruciating detail. This was what she'd died for. What Elena had died for. What Sarah Mitchell had died for. The question was, what was I willing to live for? I took photographs of everything, uploaded them to a secure cloud server with passwords only I knew. Put the originals back in the box. Then I accessed the second account, the one with the escape money. Transferred half of it to an account for Sophia. My cousin deserved a life outside this world if she wanted it. Kept the rest as insurance. Then I left the bank and walked along the river, watching the city lights reflect off the water, thinking about my mother and all the women who'd tried and failed to change this world. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You have 24 hours to bring the evidence to your father, or everyone you care about dies. Starting with Dominic Russo. Attached was a video. Dominic, tied to a chair in a room I didn't recognize. Blood on his face. Someone off camera speaking. Tell her we're serious. And Dominic, looking directly at the camera, his voice steady despite the blood. Don't give them anything. Emma, don't you dare give them anything. Then the video cut to black, and I understood that every choice I'd been weighing was now irrelevant. They had him. My father or Vasquez or someone else who thought kidnapping was an acceptable negotiation tactic. And I had 24 hours to decide who I was going to be. The woman who ran and kept running, or the woman who finally stood and fought back. I booked the first flight back to New York. Time to finish what my mother started. The flight back felt endless. Every minute stretched like hours while I sat rigid in my economy seat, the video playing on loop in my mind. Dominic's face, bloodied but defiant. His voice telling me not to give them anything, even as someone hurt him for the camera. The kind of courage that comes from knowing exactly how bad things can get and choosing dignity anyway. I'd seen that courage once before, in my mother, the night before she died. The plane couldn't land fast enough. I had the evidence on my phone now. Photographs of every document, every ledger, every damning piece of information my mother had died protecting. And I had a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Give my father everything he wanted and lose the only weapon that kept me alive. Or refuse and watch Dominic die because of me. Michael was waiting at the airport. His face was stone, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed near his weapon. He knew. Where is he? I asked before he could speak. We're working on it. His voice was tight. Get in the car. Michael, where is he? Warehouse District. South End. He opened the door, his eyes scanning the terminal like threats could materialize from thin air. But you're not going anywhere near there. Mr. Russo's orders. Mr. Russo is tied to a chair somewhere being tortured. His orders don't exactly apply right now. They apply until he's dead. Michael's jaw clenched. And he's not dead yet, which means we follow protocol, which means I take you somewhere safe while the team handles extraction. I got in the car because arguing would waste time I didn't have, but I had no intention of going to any safe house while Dominic bled out in some warehouse. Michael started driving, and I watched the city pass, calculating, planning, becoming someone I'd never been before, someone who ran toward danger instead of away from it. How many men does he have? I asked quietly. On this, everyone we can spare. Maybe 20. Michael glanced at me in the rearview mirror. But it's not about numbers. Your father has the location wired. snipers on the surrounding buildings. It's a kill box designed to take out anyone who tries a rescue. So what's the plan? Negotiate. Trade? His voice went flat. They want you and the evidence. We give them one. Maybe buy time for the other. You want to trade me? I want Mr. Russo alive. He met my eyes in the mirror. He'd burn the world down to keep you safe. The least I can do is consider burning it down to keep him breathing. We pulled up to a building I recognized. The safe house where this had all started, where I'd first learned that protection could feel like suffocation. Inside, the place had been transformed into a command center. Men I'd never seen before clustered around laptops and maps, speaking in low voices, coordinating something that looked military in its precision. A woman turned when we entered, sharp-eyed, 40-something, carrying herself like someone who'd earned every ounce of respect she commanded. She looked me over with an expression that was calculating but not unkind. Emma Clark. Or should I say, Emily Russo. She extended a hand. I'm Catherine Price. I run security operations for Dominic's legitimate businesses. And some of the less legitimate ones. I shook her hand, surprised by the strength in her grip. You know where he is? We know where they want us to think he is. She gestured to a laptop showing surveillance footage. The warehouse they're holding him in has been dark for months. Suddenly last night, power comes back on. Security cameras go active. They're not trying to hide. They're setting a stage. For what? Public execution. Her voice didn't waver. Your father wants to make an example. Show the other families that even Dominic Russo can be brought down. But more than that, he wants you to watch. Wants you to understand that running from family has consequences. The room tilted slightly. I sat down before my legs could give out. So what do? We have 3 options. Catherine pulled up a tactical map. 1, full assault. We go in heavy, accept casualties, extract Dominic by force. Survival rate for him in that scenario is maybe 40%. For our people, worse. Next option. 2, we negotiate. Give them you. Buy time to extract him during the exchange. Risky, but marginally better odds. And 3, Catherine's smile was sharp, predatory. 3, we cheat. We give them what they think they want, but not actually what they want. Classic bait and switch. I don't understand. Your father wants you in the evidence. But what if the you he gets isn't really you? What if the evidence he gets isn't really the evidence? She pulled up a photo, and I stared at a woman who could have been my sister. Same build, same hair color, same general features. Her name's Rachel. She's done extraction work before. With the right makeup, right clothes, right briefing, in low light, under stress, your father might not know the difference until it's too late. You want to send a decoy. I want to send a distraction. Catherine zoomed in on the warehouse layout. While your father's focused on Rachel, thinking he's won, we extract Dominic through the service tunnels underneath. They're old, probably unstable, but they connect to the sewer system 2 blocks away. What happens to Rachel? She's a professional. She knows the risks. Catherine's expression softened slightly. But I won't lie to you. If this goes wrong, she could die. So could Dominic. So could a dozen of our people. This isn't a clean operation with guaranteed success. This is desperation with better planning. I looked at the tactical map, at the warehouse where Dominic was bleeding, at the tunnels that might save him or might collapse and kill everyone trying. Thought about my mother, who died trying to make the right choice. About Elena, who died trying to change an unchangeable system. About all the women who'd sacrificed themselves, thinking someone else would finish what they started. There's a 4th option, I said quietly. Everyone in the room turned to look at me. I go in, really me, not a decoy, but I don't go in to surrender. I pulled out my phone, showed them the cloud storage where I'd uploaded my mother's evidence. I've already sent copies to 3 different news organizations, time to release in 12 hours unless I enter a specific code. I tell my father that, I tell him if Dominic dies, if I die, if anything happens to any of us, the evidence goes public and destroys everything he's built. He won't believe you, Michael said. He'll think you're bluffing. Then I'll prove it. I looked at Catherine. Can you get me a live video feed into that warehouse? Something I can broadcast from? Probably. Why? because I'm going to call his bluff with a bigger bluff. I stood, feeling something crystallize inside me. Not courage exactly, more like the absence of fear. The understanding that some things were worth the risk. My father thinks he knows me, thinks I'm still the scared 16-year-old who ran away. He's wrong, and it's time he learned exactly how wrong. Catherine studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, but we do it my way. You wear a wire. You follow the extraction plan exactly. And if at any point I give the abort signal, you run and don't look back. Understood? Understood. The next 2 hours were a blur of preparation. Rachel walked me through her role, showing me how she'd play decoy in case we needed backup. Michael fitted me with a wire so thin I could barely feel it. Catherine briefed me on the warehouse layout, the likely positions of guards, the signals that would trigger the extraction team. And through it all, I thought about Dominic. About the way he'd looked at me in his kitchen, vulnerable and human. About his promise that he'd never make me small, never take away my choices. About how he'd kept that promise even when it would have been easier to lie. At 11 p.m. we drove to the warehouse. Just me and Michael, following my father's instructions exactly. The building loomed against the night sky, industrial and menacing, every window dark except one on the 3rd floor. That's where they'd be, where Dominic was. Last chance to back out, Michael said as we parked. I'm not backing out. I know. He handed me something small and cold. A gun. Safety's on. Point and shoot if you need to. And Emma? Whatever happens in there, you did good. He'd be proud of you. I tucked the gun into my waistband, hidden under my jacket, and got out of the car. The warehouse was exactly as Catherine had described. 3 guards at the entrance, trying to look intimidating but mostly looking bored. They patted me down, found the gun immediately, took it without comment, missed the wire completely. Amateurs. They led me upstairs, through corridors that smelled of rust and abandonment, to a room filled with artificial light. And there was Dominic, still tied to the chair, still bleeding but alive. His eyes found mine immediately, and I saw relief and anger and fear warring in his expression. My father stood beside him, looking older than I remembered but no less dangerous. Age had made him careful, calculating, maybe more dangerous because of it. Emily. His voice was warm, paternal, a perfect lie. Thank you for coming. Let him go. In time. First, we need to discuss terms. He gestured to another chair. Sit. Let's talk like family. We stopped being family the day you killed my mother. Something flickered in his expression. Not guilt. Marco Russo didn't do guilt, but perhaps acknowledgement of a truth he'd spent years avoiding. Your mother made choices that endangered everything I'd built, everything I was trying to protect. She tried to leave an abusive marriage. That's not endangering you. That's called survival. She tried to destroy me with that evidence, to take you away, poison you against your own blood. His voice hardened. I did what I had to do to protect this family. You murdered her. The words came out steady, certain. And then you spent 12 years hunting me like I was the criminal, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. You ran. You turned your back on family. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to flinch. But I'm giving you a chance now to make it right. Give me the evidence your mother compiled. Come home, and I'll let your friend live. I looked at Dominic. His face was swollen, one eye nearly shut, but he shook his head slightly. Don't do it. Even now, even bleeding and broken, he was trying to protect me. I have a counteroffer, I said. My father's expression shifted. Surprised, maybe, or intrigued. I'm listening. You let Dominic go. You let me walk out of here. You never come after either of us again. I pulled out my phone. And in exchange, I don't press this button. What button? I showed him the screen. The timer counting down, 11 hours and 42 minutes until my mother's evidence went public. I've already sent copies to the New York Times, Washington Post, and the FBI. They'll publish simultaneously unless I enter a code every 12 hours. Kill me, and you guarantee your own destruction. You're bluffing. Am I? I pressed a button, and suddenly, the evidence appeared on every screen in the room. His guards' phones, a laptop in the corner, Even a tablet one of his men was holding. Financial records, photographs, recorded conversations, everything. That's just the first page. There are hundreds more. Every crime, every payoff, every body you've buried, all documented, all ready to go public. The room went silent. My father stared at the screens, his face going gray, then red, then dangerously still. You'd destroy your own family? You're not my family. I stood, moved toward Dominic. Family doesn't hurt the people they're supposed to protect. Family doesn't murder mothers and hunt daughters. Family doesn't... My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. You taught me what family isn't. Now I'm teaching you what consequences look like. You stupid girl. His voice went cold, flat, the warmth completely gone. You think I'm afraid of exposure? I've survived FBI investigations before. I'll survive this. Maybe. But will the other families? I looked at his guards, at the men who worked for him. Every crime in that evidence implicates multiple organizations. The Castellanos, the Russos, the Petrovas. When it goes public, it won't just be my father who falls. It'll be everyone, and they know it. I watched understanding dawn in my father's eyes. The evidence wasn't just leverage against him. It was leverage against the entire criminal infrastructure, which meant the other families would do anything to keep it buried, including turning on Marco Russo if he was the reason it might be released. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice stronger now. You're going to untie Dominic, you're going to let us walk out, and you're going to tell every family head that your daughter is off limits permanently. Because if anything happens to me, if I die or disappear, or even get a threatening phone call, everything goes public, and you become the man who destroyed everyone. My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as his runaway daughter, not as a pawn to be controlled, but as a player who just checkmated him in a game he thought he owned. You've become just like me, he said softly. No. I moved to untie Dominic myself, my hands shaking but steady enough. I've become like her. Like Mom. Strong enough to fight, but smart enough to know when fighting isn't enough, when you have to change the whole game instead. Dominic stood, swayed slightly. I caught him, felt his weight against me, solid and real and alive. His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them I'd never seen before. Not gratitude, not relief, something deeper, something that looked like recognition of an equal. We're leaving, I said to the room. And if anyone tries to stop us, I press this button right now and watch this whole empire burn. No one moved, not my father, not his guards, not anyone. We walked out slowly, Dominic leaning on me, both of us waiting for the bullet that might come anyway. But it didn't. We made it to the stairs, to the corridor, to the entrance. Michael was there with the car, engine running. Catherine had the extraction team surrounding the building, visible now, making sure everyone understood we weren't leaving alone or unprotected. As we pulled away, Dominic finally spoke. His voice was rough, damaged. You're insane. That was completely insane. Probably. I watched the warehouse disappear behind us, but it worked. For now. He touched my face gently, his fingers careful despite the pain he must have been in. Emma, you just declared war on your own father, on the entire family structure. They're not going to forget this. Good. I met his eyes. I don't want them to forget. I want them to remember that there are consequences now. That women aren't weapons or pawns anymore. That we can fight back. He smiled. Blood on his teeth, but genuine warmth in his expression. What happened to the woman who just wanted to hide and be left alone? She decided hiding wasn't enough. I held his hand, feeling his pulse steady and strong beneath my fingers. She decided that maybe building something better was worth the risk after all. We drove through the night city, leaving my father and his warehouse and 12 years of running behind. And for the first time since I was 16 years old, I felt something I'd forgotten existed. Freedom. Not the freedom of hiding or running or surviving, but the freedom of choosing, of standing, of fighting for something that mattered. The evidence was still out there, time to release unless I stopped it. My father was still dangerous. The families would regroup, retaliate, find new ways to threaten. But tonight, we'd won. And tomorrow, We'd figure out the next move. Together. The safe house smelled like antiseptic and coffee. Catherine had transformed the living room into a makeshift medical station, and a doctor I'd never met was stitching up Dominic's face with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times to count. I sat across from them, hands wrapped around a mug I couldn't remember anyone giving me, watching thread pull through skin and thinking about all the ways tonight could have ended differently. Dominic didn't make a sound. Not when the needle went in. Not when the doctor cleaned the deeper cuts. Not even when she reset what was probably a broken rib. He just kept his eyes on me, like I was the thing anchoring him to consciousness. "You should rest," Catherine said, appearing beside me with that uncanny ability she had to materialize exactly when needed. "We've got security on every entrance. You're safe here." Am I? The question came out more honest than I'd intended. Or am I just in a different kind of danger now? She sat down, her movements precise and economical. Military training, I'd learned. Catherine Price had been Army intelligence before Dominic recruited her, back when he was still building something that could pass for legitimate business. You threatened the entire family structure tonight. Made yourself the most dangerous person in their world because you're the only one holding the button that destroys everything. So no, you're not safe, but you're also not alone anymore. That counts for something. Does it? I watched the doctor finish with Dominic, pack up her supplies, leave without a word. Professional discretion, probably, or professional fear. Because from where I'm sitting, I just made myself a target for every crime family on the East Coast. And the only thing keeping me alive is a timer on my phone and the hope that they believe I'm crazy enough to actually press it. Are you? Catherine's eyes were sharp, assessing. Crazy enough to burn it all down. I thought about my mother, about Elena, about every woman who'd tried to change this system and ended up destroyed by it. Thought about Sophia growing up in the same world that had killed them. Thought about the girl I'd been at 16, running scared, and the woman I'd become tonight, standing in a warehouse full of armed men and betting everything on a bluff I wasn't sure I could back up. I don't know, I admitted. But I need them to think I am. I need everyone to believe that I'd rather destroy everything than let them hurt the people I care about. Then that's what we'll sell. She stood, moved to a laptop, started typing. I'm going to create a digital trail that makes your threat look even more real. Automated releases, multiple redundancies, dead man switches that trigger if you don't check in. We'll make it so complicated that even if they kill you, they can't be sure the evidence won't still go public. You can do that. I can make them think I did. Her smile was sharp, which is all that matters. Perception is reality in this world. You just need them to perceive you as too dangerous to touch. The doctor left, and Dominic stood slowly, testing his ribs, his balance, the limits of what his body could still do. He looked like hell, face swollen, eye blackened, moving like every breath hurt. But he was alive. We were both alive. That had to count for something. I need to talk to her, he said to Catherine. Alone. You need to rest. I need to talk to her. His voice didn't rise, but something in it made Catherine nod and leave without argument. That was Dominic. Even bleeding and broken, he commanded respect through sheer force of presence. When we were alone, he moved to sit beside me on the couch. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell the copper of blood and the sharp sting of antiseptic. Close enough to be intimate without being invasive. You saved my life tonight, he said quietly. You told me not to give them anything. And you ignored me completely. He almost smiled, then winced as the movement pulled at his stitches. Thank you for that. For ignoring orders and being stubborn and walking into that warehouse like you owned it. I was terrified the entire time. I know, I could see it. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand. His palm was rough, warm, solid, real. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear. The presence of it and the choice to act regardless. I looked at our joined hands, at the contrast between his scarred knuckles and my unmarked skin. Thought about all the violence those hands had committed, all the people he'd hurt to survive in his world. Thought about my own hands, soft from years of hiding, now holding evidence that could destroy thousands of lives. What happens now? I asked. My father knows I have the evidence. The other families know too, eventually. They'll come for me, won't they? Try to call my bluff or eliminate the threat I represent. Probably. He didn't lie, didn't soften it. Just gave me the truth I'd asked for, which is why we need to move fast. Change the game before they can organize a response. Change it how? He was quiet for a moment, thinking. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision made. We use the evidence. Not all of it. Just enough to prove it's real, that your threat isn't empty. We release information on the Castellano family. They're the weakest link right now. Old leadership with new competition. We show the other families what happens when someone tries to come after you. You want to make an example. I want to make sure everyone understands the new rules. He squeezed my hand gently. You touch Emma. The evidence gets released. You come after the people she cares about. The evidence gets released. You even think about threatening her, and pieces of it start leaking until there's nothing left to protect. That's going to start a war. We're already in a war. We have been since you walked into that warehouse. His expression was serious, tired, but determined. The question isn't whether there's going to be conflict. It's whether we control how that conflict plays out or let it control us. I pulled my hand back, stood up, needed to move. The room felt too small suddenly, too full of decisions I wasn't ready to make. This isn't what I wanted. I just wanted to be left alone. To live my life without looking over my shoulder every second? I know. And now I'm what? The woman who holds the entire criminal underworld hostage? The person everyone wants dead because I'm too dangerous to let live. Now you're the woman who has power. He stood too, moved to stand beside me at the window overlooking the city. Real power. Not the kind that comes from fear or violence, but from information. From being smart enough to know how to use what you have. I don't want power. Neither did I. His voice went soft. But we have it anyway. And the only question that matters is what we do with it. Do we use it to protect ourselves and the people we care about? Or do we give it up and go back to hiding? I looked out at the city, at all those lights representing all those lives. People who had no idea that their safety, their future, might depend on what I decided in this moment. People who'd never know my name but whose world I could reshape with a single button press. There's a third option, I said slowly, an idea forming. We don't use the evidence to destroy. We use it to rebuild. I don't follow. I turned to face him. The evidence my mother collected, it's not just crimes. It's the entire infrastructure, the connections, the relationships, the way the families operate. What if we used it not to prosecute everyone, but to force change from the inside? You want to blackmail the families into going legitimate? I want to give them a choice. The idea was crystallizing now, becoming real. Transform their operations, clean up their acts, move toward actual legal businesses, or face exposure. Not all at once. Gradually. Family by family, operation by operation. Make it so that cooperation is more profitable than resistance. Dominic stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's actually brilliant. And completely insane. Seems to be my specialty lately. It would take years. Decades, maybe. But I could see him thinking it through, calculating possibilities. And it would require constant pressure, constant management. Someone would have to oversee the whole thing, make sure families were actually transforming instead of just hiding better. Someone like you. I met his eyes. You said you wanted to change things. That Elena died trying to reform this world from the inside. This could be how, not through one big prosecution that sends everyone to prison and leaves a power vacuum for someone worse to fill, but through sustained pressure that forces evolution. And you? His voice was careful. What's your role in this grand plan? I keep the evidence. I stay visible enough that everyone knows I'm still the one holding the button. I become the reminder that going back to the old ways isn't an option. I took a breath. And I stop running. I stop hiding. I claim my name, Emily Russo, and I use it, not as my father's daughter, as my mother's daughter, as someone who actually changes things instead of just surviving them. He was quiet for a long time. Then, your father will never accept this. He'll come after you with everything he has. Let him. And I meant it. He's old, weak, losing support from the other families already because of tonight. If he comes after me, he proves he's the problem that needs to be removed. And the families will remove him themselves to protect their own interests. You're talking about getting your own father killed. I'm talking about consequences. The words felt hard in my mouth. Necessary. He killed my mother for trying to change things. He's hunted me for 12 years. He tortured you to get to me. At what point does family stop being a reason to protect someone and start being a reason to stop them? Dominic moved closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This path you're talking about, it's dangerous. Complicated. It means staying in this world instead of leaving it. Are you sure that's what you want? I'm not sure of anything except that I'm tired of being afraid. I held his gaze. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of letting violent men control my life because I'm too scared to fight back. So yes, I want to stay. I want to fight. I want to finish what my mother started. But do it smarter. Do it in a way that actually creates lasting change instead of just creating more bodies. Then we do it together. He cupped my face gently, his touch careful around the bruises I'd gotten from being grabbed earlier. Partners. Like we agreed. Partners. I confirmed. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away, and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, tasting of blood and possibility. Nothing like the dramatic first kisses in movies. Just two damaged people finding something solid in each other. Something worth protecting, worth fighting for. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Your father posted bail 3 hours ago. And according to Catherine's surveillance, he's not going home. He's gathering people, planning something. The moment shattered. Where? We don't know yet. But Emma, he's coming for you. And when he does, it won't be subtle. It won't be negotiation. He's going to try to end this the only way he knows how. With violence. With overwhelming violence. Dominic stepped back, his expression hardening. Which means we need to be ready. Not just defensively. We need to anticipate his move and counter it before he can execute. How? By doing what you did tonight. He moved to the laptop Catherine had been working on. We make him the problem. We leak just enough of the evidence to show the other families that Marco Russo's vendetta against his own daughter is endangering everyone. We force them to choose between supporting him and protecting themselves. They'll kill him. They'll remove him. His voice was clinical, detached. Whether that means forced retirement or something more permanent depends on how much he resists. But Emma, you need to understand, if we do this, if we actively work to destroy your father's position, there's no going back. You'll have crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I thought about that line. About my mother, who'd tried to cross it and died. About Elena, who'd made the same attempt with the same result. About Sarah Mitchell, whose name my mother had used, whose resemblance had made me a target. All these women who'd tried to change things and paid with their lives. Maybe it was time someone survived the attempt. Do it, I said. Release what you need to release. Make the call to whoever needs to be called. End this. Emma, I'm sure. And I was more sure than I'd been about anything in years. My father had 12 years to leave me alone, to let me live my life in peace. He chose to hunt me instead. He chose to use violence instead of acceptance. These consequences, they're his, not mine. Dominic studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded and made the call. I listened as he spoke in low tones, Italian mixed with English, explaining the situation to whoever was on the other end. A council member. Probably. Someone with the power to make decisions about Marco Russo's future. When he hung up, his expression was grim. It's done. The council is meeting tomorrow morning. They'll vote on whether to remove your father from his position and exile him from the city. If he refuses to leave peacefully, he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. How long do we have? Until he finds out about the vote. Maybe hours. He checked his watch. Until he does something desperate. Less than that. Catherine's already reinforcing security, calling in additional people. We're going to turn this place into a fortress. And then we wait. And then we wait. But we didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, Catherine burst into the room, tablet in hand, her expression urgent. We have a problem. Multiple problems. Your father just released a video. It's everywhere. News sites, social media, everywhere. She turned the tablet so we could see. My father's face filled the screen, looking grandfatherly and concerned. Behind him was a room I recognized, our old house, where I'd grown up, where my mother had died. My name is Marco Russo, he began, his voice warm and paternal. And I'm speaking to you tonight about my daughter, Emily. She disappeared 12 years ago, and I've been searching for her ever since. Recently, I found her, and what I discovered breaks my heart. He paused, wiping his eyes in a gesture that might have seemed genuine if I didn't know him. My daughter has fallen under the influence of Dominic Russo, a dangerous criminal who's been using her, manipulating her, turning her against her own family. He's convinced her to threaten innocent people with false evidence, to blackmail hard-working families, to destroy lives for his own gain. Jesus, Dominic muttered. Emily, if you're watching this, my father continued, looking directly at the camera, please come home. We can protect you from him. We can get you the help you need. You're not a criminal, sweetheart. You're a victim, and your family loves you. The video ended. Catherine pulled it back, showed us the view count. Already over 1 million. Comments flooding in, most of them sympathetic to the grieving father looking for his troubled daughter. He's reframing the entire narrative, I said, my voice hollow, making me look like a victim, making you look like the villain, making himself look like the concerned parent. And it's working. Catherine scrolled through news articles already picking up the story. Social media is eating this up. You're trending as the kidnapped heiress, and Dominic is trending as the crime boss who brainwashed you. This changes everything, Dominic said quietly. If public opinion turns against us, if people believe you're being held against your will, the families can't support us. They won't risk the exposure. So what do we do? I felt panic rising, threatening to overwhelm the certainty I'd felt just minutes ago. How do we counter this? Catherine and Dominic exchanged a look. Then Catherine said carefully, you tell your own story. On camera. Unedited. You explain what really happened, who you really are, what Marco Russo really did to your mother and to you. That puts a target on my back forever. You already have a target on your back. Dominic's voice was gentle but firm. At least this way, you control the narrative. You show people that you're not a victim being manipulated. You're a woman making her own choices, fighting her own battles. I thought about stepping into that light, about claiming my name publicly, irrevocably, about burning the bridges I'd spent 12 years building, the anonymity I'd fought so hard to maintain. But my mother hadn't stayed anonymous. Elena hadn't. Sarah Mitchell hadn't. They'd all spoken up, stepped forward, tried to change things, and they'd all died for it. Okay, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Set up the camera. I'll tell my story. All of it. Emma, Dominic started. This is what we do, right? I turned to face him. We change the game. We take control. We stop letting violent men write the narrative about our lives. He nodded slowly. Okay. But we do it smart. We prep. We plan. We make sure you're protected before, during, and after. How long do I have? To prepare? Maybe an hour. Catherine was already moving, pulling up equipment, checking lighting. Your father's video is spreading fast. We need to respond before his version becomes the only version people believe. 1 hour. 60 minutes to figure out how to tell the story of my life in a way that would make people understand. That would make them believe. That would change the narrative from helpless victim to determined survivor. I sat down and started making notes. Started remembering. Started preparing to do what my mother never got the chance to do. Tell the truth about Marco Russo. About the Russo family. About what happened to women who tried to leave. Dominic sat beside me, his hand finding mine, his presence solid and real and grounding. Whatever happens after this, he said quietly, we face it together. Deal. Deal. I agreed, and I meant it, because whatever came next, public scrutiny, family retaliation, danger I couldn't even imagine yet, at least I wouldn't be facing it alone. At least I'd be facing it as myself, as Emily Russo, as my mother's daughter, as someone who'd finally stopped running. The camera's red light blinked like a heartbeat. Catherine had set up the shot in Dominic's study, the one with the books and the fireplace, the room that felt lived in and human. Behind me, soft light. In front of me, a lens that would carry my truth to millions of strangers who thought they knew my story but had only heard my father's version. I'd spent the last hour writing notes, crossing them out, rewriting. Dominic had sat beside me the whole time, not offering advice, just being present, solid, real. Finally, I'd put the pen down and said, "I can't script this. I just have to tell it. Then tell it," he'd said simply. Now Catherine counted down. 3, 2, 1. I looked into the camera and began, "My name is Emily Russo, not Emma Clark, not the kidnapped heiress my father described, not the victim being manipulated by a dangerous man. Emily Russo, Marco Russo's daughter, Maria Castellano's daughter. And this is my story, in my own words, for the first and last time." I took a breath, felt it steady me. I was 16 years old when I watched my father kill my mother. Not directly, he didn't pull a trigger or wrap his hands around her throat. He just made a phone call. And 3 days later, they found her body in the river. The official story was suicide. Everyone who mattered knew it wasn't. But no one said anything, because that's how it works in families like mine. Silence is survival. Questions get you killed. The words came easier now. Muscle memory of truth I'd carried alone for too long. My mother was trying to leave him, trying to take me somewhere safe. Somewhere we could just be normal people living normal lives. She'd compiled evidence, financial records, photographs, recordings, proof of everything my father and his associates had done. She was going to give it to the FBI in exchange for protection, for freedom, for a chance. I felt Dominic's presence behind the camera, just out of frame, anchoring me. She never got that chance. And when they found her body, my father sat me down and explained very carefully what happens to women who betray family, who try to leave, who think they can just walk away from blood and obligation. Then he told me he loved me and asked what I wanted for dinner. My voice cracked slightly. I didn't try to hide it. I ran that night. 16 years old with a backpack and my mother's secrets and the understanding that staying meant becoming her, meant accepting that love and violence were the same thing. That family was just another word for cage. So I ran. And I kept running for 12 years. Changed my name. Changed my life. Became someone small and invisible and safe. I leaned forward slightly, let them see my face clearly. Until 3 weeks ago, when I yelled at a man in traffic for cutting me off. That man was Dominic Russo, my father's nephew. A man with his own complicated history with violence and family and choice. And yes, he's done terrible things. I won't defend that or minimize it. But when he realized who I was, when he understood that I was being hunted by men who wanted to use me against my father, he offered protection, not because he wanted something from me, because he understood what it meant to want out. Behind the camera, Catherine gestured, "Keep going. You're doing great. My father's video makes me sound like a victim, like I don't have agency or choice, like I'm too broken or manipulated to know my own mind. But I'm standing here, speaking to you freely, telling you that everything I've done in the past 3 weeks has been my choice. Accepting Dominic's help was my choice. Confronting my father was my choice. And what I'm about to do next is also my choice." This was the moment, the point of no return. I have evidence. The same evidence my mother compiled before she died. Proof of decades of organized crime, corruption, violence, names, dates, financial transactions, everything. And I'm not going to use it the way my father claims, to blackmail innocent people or destroy lives. I'm going to use it to force change, to give families like mine a choice, transform into legitimate operations, or face prosecution, gradually, sustainably, in a way that actually creates lasting reform instead of just creating power vacuums. I stood, moved closer to the camera, to my father. I'm not coming home. I'm not the scared girl you tried to control. I'm my mother's daughter, and I'm finishing what she started. You had 12 years to leave me alone. You chose to hunt me instead. These consequences are yours, not mine. To everyone else who's been watching this story unfold, who thinks they know what's happening, you don't. You can't. Because you haven't lived in a world where love and violence are so tangled you can't tell them apart. where family means loyalty to death, even when death is what you're trying to escape. But I have. And I'm choosing something different. I'm choosing to be free. Really free. Not by hiding or running or surviving, but by standing. By fighting. By using what I have to protect people who can't protect themselves. I felt tears on my face but didn't wipe them away. My mother died trying to change an unchangeable system. Elena Russo died trying to do the same thing. Sarah Mitchell died. So many women have died because they stood up and said no more. I'm not going to die, I'm going to live. And I'm going to make sure their deaths meant something. I looked directly into the lens. Let everyone see me completely. My name is Emily Russo. I'm 28 years old. I'm done running, and I'm just getting started. Catherine cut the feed. The red light went dark. I stood there, shaking, feeling like I'd just stripped naked in front of the world. Exposed every wound, every fear, every piece of myself I'd kept hidden. Dominic was there immediately, his arms around me, holding me while I fell apart. Not saying anything, just being present, just being solid. You were perfect, Catherine said quietly. Absolutely perfect. It's uploading now. Should be live in 5 minutes. What happens next? My voice was muffled against Dominic's chest. Now we see if the world believes you. The video went viral. Within an hour, it had 10 million views. Within 2 hours, major news networks were covering it. Legal analysts were discussing the implications. Social media was exploding with hot takes and theories and opinions. Some people called me brave, others called me a liar, a manipulator, a criminal myself. But what mattered was that they heard my voice. My version. My truth. And more importantly, so did the families. Dominic's phone rang constantly. Council members, family heads, people whose opinions shaped the entire power structure. I listened to his side of the conversations, heard him explain, negotiate, promise. Slowly, carefully, he was building consensus. Not for my destruction, but for my proposal. For transformation over prosecution. For evolution instead of war. 3 hours after my video went live, we got word that the council had voted. Marco Russo was being removed from his position, effective immediately. He had 48 hours to leave the city. If he refused, if he made any move against me or Dominic or anyone connected to us, he'd be handled. Permanently. It's over, Catherine said, but she didn't sound relieved. She sounded cautious, at least this phase of it. He won't accept exile, I said quietly. He'll fight. Let him. Dominic's voice was hard. Every family head has seen your video. They've seen what you're offering, a path forward that doesn't end in prison. If Marco fights that, if he puts their interests at risk because of personal vendetta, they'll eliminate him themselves. He's not stupid enough to force that play. But I knew my father. Knew that pride mattered more to him than survival. That losing control of his daughter, losing face in front of the families, losing everything he'd built, that would eat at him worse than any threat of violence. The call came at 2 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then something, instinct, maybe, or just the certainty that this was inevitable, made me pick up. Emily. His voice was tired, old, more human than I'd heard it in years. You've won. I hope you're satisfied. I'm not satisfied. I'm just done being afraid of you. I loved your mother. The words came out broken. I know you don't believe that. But I did. In my way. And when she tried to leave, when she tried to take you from me, I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't lose both of you. So you killed her and lost us both anyway. Yes, just that. Simple acknowledgement of the math of violence. I've spent 12 years trying to undo that choice. Trying to find you, bring you home, make it right somehow. But there's no making it right, is there? Some things can't be fixed. Some losses can't be recovered. I was quiet, not trusting my voice. The council has made their decision. I'm leaving the city, going somewhere quiet where no one knows my name. A pause. I won't bother you again, Emily. You have my word. For what that's worth. Why are you calling me? Because you're my daughter. And despite everything, despite all the ways I failed you and your mother, I wanted you to know. I'm proud of you. You're stronger than I ever was. Braver. You didn't let this world make you small. Tears streamed down my face, silent and hot. You don't get to be proud of me. You don't get to take credit for what I became despite you. I know. His voice was soft. But I'm proud anyway, and I'm sorry. For all of it. For every choice that brought us here. Sorry doesn't bring her back. No, it doesn't. He took a breath. Goodbye, Emily. Live the life your mother wanted for you. Be free in ways we never could be. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, phone in hand, crying for the father I'd never had and never would. For the man who'd loved so poorly it became indistinguishable from hate. For all the ways family could wound you while claiming to protect you. Dominic found me like that. Didn't ask what happened, just held me until the tears stopped and the sun started rising through the windows, painting everything gold and new. He's really leaving. I asked finally. His plane takes off in 4 hours. Catherine has people confirming. He pulled back slightly, looked at my face. How do you feel? I don't know. And it was true. Relief, grief, anger, exhaustion, all of it tangled together into something I didn't have words for. I thought I'd feel vindicated, victorious, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. He brushed hair from my face. You've been running on adrenaline and survival instinct for weeks. Now that the immediate threat is gone, you're crashing, it'll pass. And then what? Then you decide what you want your life to look like. He stood, pulled me up with him. Come on, I want to show you something. We drove as the city woke up around us. Office workers heading to jobs, parents walking kids to school, all these normal people living normal lives. The kind of life I'd spent 12 years pretending to have and never quite believing was real. Dominic pulled up to a building I'd never seen before. Industrial neighborhood, warehouse district, but gentrifying. Young couples walking dogs, coffee shops with carefully curated aesthetic. The kind of place that was becoming something new while still honoring what it had been. What is this? I asked. Your legacy. He unlocked a door, led me inside. The space was huge, empty, full of light from massive windows. I bought it last week. Thought it could be the headquarters for what you're building. What I'm building? The Advocacy Center. The place that helps people leave organized crime families. That provides legal support, housing assistance, counseling, everything you needed when you ran and couldn't find. He gestured around the empty space. You said you wanted to finish what your mother started. This is how, not by destroying the families, but by giving people a way out if they want it. Making sure no other 16-year-old has to run alone the way you did. I walked through the space, imagining it. Offices for lawyers and social workers. Meeting rooms for support groups. A safe space for people trying to rebuild their lives. Everything I'd wished existed when I'd been running scared with nowhere to turn. I can't do this alone, I said quietly. You won't have to. He moved to stand beside me. Catherine's already volunteered. She knows people, former FBI, former military, people who want to do something meaningful. And Sophia called this morning. Your cousin. She wants to help, too. Wants to make sure other kids in the family have the choice she never felt she had. Sophia? My voice broke on her name. She saw your video. Reached out through Catherine. She's been wanting to leave for years but didn't know how. Didn't think she could. He showed me his phone. A message from a number I didn't recognize, but a name I'd know anywhere. You gave her permission to want something different. To imagine a life outside the family. I read the message through tears. Aunt Emily, I never got to say goodbye when you left, but I understood why you did. And now I understand I can too. Thank you for being brave enough to show me how. Love, Sophia. She called me Aunt Emily. I whispered. You are. Blood doesn't stop being blood just because we run from it. He put his phone away. But it also doesn't have to define us. We get to choose what family means, who we build it with, what we build it on. I turned to face him fully. This man who'd started as an obligation, become a protector, transformed into a partner. Who'd given me space to find my own strength while being there when I needed something solid to lean against. What are we? I asked. Really? He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Genuine warmth beneath the scars and the exhaustion. We're whatever we decide to be. No scripts, no expectations. Just two people who found each other in the middle of chaos and decided we liked what we found. That's not very specific. No, it's not. He stepped closer. But it's honest, and it's ours. And for now, that's enough. I kissed him then, soft and deliberate, tasting possibility and hope and all the things I'd thought I'd never get to have. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, both of us breathing the same air, sharing the same space. I'm scared, I admitted, of what comes next, of being this visible, of the target on my back that never really goes away. Me too. He didn't pretend otherwise. Every day. But I'm more scared of what happens if we don't try. If we don't at least attempt to build something better. My mother tried. Elena tried. And you're trying. He pulled back, held my gaze. But you're not doing it alone. You're not carrying this by yourself. That's the difference. That's what makes this time different. 6 months later, the Advocacy Center opened its doors. We'd converted the warehouse into something beautiful. Glass offices that let in light. Comfortable furniture that invited people to stay. Artwork from local artists who'd survived their own violence and trauma. A place that said, you can heal here, you can rebuild here, you're safe here. Sophia was my first official hire. 21 years old, sharp as a knife, with her father's instinct for reading people but her mother's capacity for empathy. She'd left the family officially, changed her name legally, and dedicated herself to helping others do the same. Catherine ran security and operations with the kind of efficiency that would have made her drill sergeants proud. She'd assembled a team of former law enforcement and military who understood both the danger and the mission, who believed that people deserved second chances, even people born into worlds that told them violence was the only option. And Dominic. He worked with the families, pushing them toward legitimate operations, using the evidence I held as both carrot and stick. It was slow, frustrating work. Some families cooperated, others resisted, but gradually, measurably, things were changing, not perfectly, not completely, but enough that we could see progress. I testified before a grand jury about my father's crimes, about what I'd witnessed, what I knew, what my mother had documented. It led to indictments, prosecutions, some convictions. Not enough to dismantle everything. That would take years, maybe decades, but enough to send a message. The old ways were ending. The new rules were being written. My father never came back to the city. I heard through channels that he'd settled somewhere in the Southwest, living quietly under a different name. Part of me wondered if he thought about us, about the daughter he'd driven away, the wife he'd killed, the empire he'd lost. Another part of me didn't care. He was my past. I was building my future. On a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 year after I'd yelled at a stranger in traffic, Dominic and I stood on the rooftop of the Advocacy Center. The city spread out below us, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. We'd just finished a ribbon-cutting ceremony for our expanded space. We'd grown faster than anticipated, served more people than we'd dreamed possible. You did it, he said quietly. Everything you said you would, you actually did it. We did it. I leaned against him, let him take some of my weight. None of this would exist without you. Maybe. But it wouldn't mean anything without you. He turned me to face him, his expression serious. I have something for you. He pulled out a small box. Not a ring box. I'd been clear about not wanting marriage. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This was flatter, square. I opened it carefully. Inside was a key. Simple, silver, unadorned. It's to the house, he explained. The one in the woods where you first felt safe. I had the deed transferred to your name. It's yours now. Completely. A place that's just yours. That no one can take from you or use against you. I stared at the key, feeling something in my chest crack open. Not breaking, opening. Making space for things I'd thought I'd never have. Permanence, safety, home. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He closed my hand around the key. Just know that you have it. A place that's yours. A life that's yours. Choices that are yours. Everything your mother wanted for you and never got. I pulled him close, buried my face in his chest, and let myself cry. Not from grief this time. From relief. From the overwhelming realization that I'd made it. I'd survived. I'd transformed survival into something that looked like living. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me, for being patient while I figured out who I was, for not trying to save me when what I really needed was to save myself. Thank you for letting me be part of it. He kissed the top of my head. For trusting me when you had every reason not to, for choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. We stood there as the sun finished setting, as the city lit up fully, as evening became night. Two people who'd found each other in violence but built something in peace, who'd started with trauma but ended with hope. I was Emily Russo, 28 years old, my mother's daughter, my own woman, no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, just living, really living, finally, completely, impossibly free. And that freedom, earned through blood and tears and choices I'd had to make alone before I learned I didn't have to, that freedom was worth everything it had cost. The key in my hand, the man beside me, the work ahead of us, the life I'd built from the ashes of the life I'd run from. This was what my mother had died for, what Elena had died for, what so many women had fought for and never got to see. I was living it for all of them, and for myself, and for every person who'd walk through our doors looking for a way out, a second chance, a possibility they'd never imagined existed. Freedom wasn't an ending, it was a beginning, and mine was just starting. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen. Tentar novamente.